Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Charles McNeely from DevDoc Theater, and I am so excited, happy, honored, and privileged to be welcoming Mike McCall, who currently lives in Covington, Louisiana, but has many memories and grew up in Cameron Parish, Louisiana, Grand Chenier, and around those areas. And it's so good, Mike, having you here, and welcome. Glad we were able to do this on a warm, hot, I guess you could say, Thursday afternoon in July. But yeah, we're here to talk about, your Hurricane Audrey story. But before we get to that, can you give people and me an idea of, what are you doing now? What are you interested in, your hobbies and stuff like that before we get into the story?
Well, I had a career in healthcare, and we basically started a company that's now known as Medicis. And
I've heard of it. Okay.
It was one of the largest home care. I think it was the largest home care company in the United States. It's just been bought, or it's in the process of being bought. I can't remember the name of the company. I've been out of it for about 20 years, but
okay.
Basically, right now I live in Covington with my wife, and I have 2 grown daughters, 3 grandsons, and this has been home for 30-something years.
Oh wow.
It's I got transferred. We're living in Lake Charles. I got transferred to Baton Rouge, and I'm a LSU fan, but I don't bleed purple and gold. But I'm a fan. I don't work in a plant, and I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much for me to be there,
Yeah.
And I really wanted my children to, if they could, to go to a public school.
Yeah.
So my wife and I got in a car, and we headed on I-12, headed east.
Right.
Got off in Covington, and I got stuck in a traffic jam because they were having a homecoming parade. And started looking, I was pointing out to my wife that all of the little windows in downtown area, they were painted, for the Covington High School, all this stuff. And
yes,
like the courthouse was there, the drugstore was there, the barbershop was there. I kept waiting for Andy and Barney to walk around. Okay. We decided, all right, I commuted to Baton Rouge for about 8 years.
Wow.
And, an hour commute. But look, growing up in Grand Chenier, we had to travel an hour to go to a grocery store.
Yes, you did. Yes.
And gas prices weren't what they are now.
Right.
So, wife and I still in the same house, built us a home. And both of us are basically, I don't want to say retired, but kind of semi-retired. I take a lot of projects on.
Nice.
We, my partner and I, we like to do elections for hospitals that are trying to raise taxes.
Yes.
Or trying to build a new cancer center or things like that. But they have to have an income, money to pay for it. And
yeah.
That I like doing that because basically it's helping people.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Mike, for letting us know what life is like right now. But now that we're finished with current stature, let's go back 66 years. June 27th, 1957. Can you tell me a little, how old were you when Audrey hit? What age were you?
Not quite 5.
How much? What time? Sorry?
Not quite 5.
Okay.
Not quite 5.
Do you remember anything before Audrey hit of what it was like? And you're Grand Chenier, right? That's where you grew up?
Absolutely, yeah. I was born in Creole, like just about every person in Grand Chenier was at my age.
Yes.
At Dr. Dix's little hospital in Creole.
Yes.
But you went home that same day. And we lived in a little house behind, I was born, when I was a baby, but right behind the white Catholic church house that is no longer there.
Absolutely, yes.
My dad built a house 1 street over.
Okay.
That whole property where the little church was, the big Alcide Miller house, that was all owned by my great-grandfather.
And so Alcide Miller was your great-great-grandfather? Okay, all right.
And so anyway, Grand Chenier was a community unto its own. For a long time it was an island, and the only way to get off of it was by boat.
Yes.
And but in the 50s, I want to say in the 40s, sorry. In the 40s, they built a road, had a bridge, wooden bridge, and people actually went to Lake Charles, still a shell road. Okay,
Yes.
the highway was still shell.
Right.
But it was a very close-knit community. They'd just gotten telephones in 1952.
Wow.
Hey,
Okay.
electricity, I think, came about in the middle 40s. So it was very isolated.
Okay.
But it was a thriving community.
Yeah.
There was a high school, and in fact, it was one of the first certified high schools in Louisiana.
Oh, nice.
It was Grand Chenier. Honestly, the more I think about it, my grandmother told me a bunch of the stories when I was growing up. But the more I think about it, they were like well beyond what they should have been.
Okay.
For example, my great grandfather, all of his children either had the opportunity to go to college or actually graduated from college.
Wow. Okay.
Which in 1900,
Yes.
1910, that's
yes. That's
my
amazing and
grandmother-
wonderful.
She would tell me stories of how she got to Ruston. They all went to Ruston.
Okay. Why?
They'd take a boat to Lake Arthur,
Okay.
then
The
catch
Mermentau, right? They went up the Mermentau River and
Correct.
Lake Mermentau to Lake Arthur.
the Grand Lake up to Lake Arthur,
Yep.
and they would catch a train in Jennings,
Oh.
and they'd go to Ruston. But
Okay.
it was a really nice community. Everybody knew everybody, which is good sometimes, but bad sometimes.
Yeah.
But they all looked out for you.
Nice.
They all would correct you too.
Yeah.
And I got spanked quite a few times by my neighbors.
You have quite a few people, yeah, that will.
I was kind of bad at times, okay, just mischievous. But
Right,
it was
that's all of us down here. I mean, we grew up and learned from our mistakes.
Mhm. But that's how Grand Chenier was. It was a community.
Yes, very much, with all the important things there. So, thank you. When you got to that date of Audrey, do you remember, as far as preparation, what was done? What do you remember about your parents and people doing to prepare for it?
My dad was a boat captain,
Hey.
and he worked for Union. I think it was called Union Oil.
Okay, what's your dad's first name?
My dad's first name is Claude.
Claude McCall.
He was never known by Claude. His nickname was Pete.
Pete?
Pete McCall.
Okay, all right.
And he passed away fairly young. He was like 52 when he died.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So a lot of people kind of forget about him. But
Yeah.
he worked for Pure Oil. I think it was Pure. Could have been Union, but I think it was Pure Oil. He piloted the old minesweepers. After World War II, Pure Oil bought these minesweepers, and they would take crews out to the Gulf. There were a few oil rigs just starting.
Yes.
And my uncle, Norman McCall, was the port captain. Okay, so my dad worked for my uncle. Okay. And they knew there was something brewing in the Gulf. They knew, but of course, back then technology wasn't what we have now.
Right.
And my uncle had ordered the boats to be evacuated up the Calcasieu River.
Yes.
And my dad, was a little worried about the storm. My uncle promised him, "Don't worry. If we have to evacuate, we'll get out. He'll take us out." So the day before the storm, Dad was taking the boat out, and my great grandfather, Tobe McCall, and my great aunt, Fanny McCall, decided to come visit us, and they spent the night with us. Mom had called Uncle Norman to make sure, and he told us, "Stop worrying, don't worry."
Yeah.
And we watched Gary Tyler on Channel 7.
I remember Mr. Tyler. I taught his nephew at McNeese. His nephew was one of my students.
I remember this. He said, they're advising nobody to evacuate because the roads were bad then. There's still not the greatest roads down there. You have no shoulders to speak of, right?
That's right. Yeah.
This was a shell road, period.
Yeah.
Paved.
Yeah.
So he was advising that they didn't expect anything to happen before the next afternoon,
Right.
which plenty of time. Plenty of time for everybody to get out.
Yes.
So Mother went to bed, and Fanny, Papa Tobe went to bed, and I want to say it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Rain lots of rain and wind. And my mom got up, and we lived right one house from the Mermentau River.
Okay. All right.
The river was in our yard.
Okay.
Okay. Or almost to the yard. It had already passed the house on the river.
So the river had swelled.
It's starting to rise, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So my mother calls my uncle right away to let him know. And he goes, I'll be there. I'll come get you. We'll get out. We'll get out.
Okay.
So she woke up my great aunt, my great grandfather woke me up. And as a kid, you remember certain things as a kid that an adult might even think about. But I remember my mom, she had just gotten some brand new pine floors, just put in the house.
Oh, man.
So she made that house as watertight as she could. She didn't want her floors to get wet.
Right.
Stuff everywhere. Which probably was not a great idea because the house ended up floating away. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
But we got ready, everything. We really didn't have anything but what we were in, clothes.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So my uncle pulled up, and he didn't have his wife or his 2 children with him. My uncle lived about, I want to say 2 miles, not far, just a couple miles east of where we lived. He had to get out, to evacuate, you had to travel west, cross the bridge, then go north.
Yes.
So he left my aunt and 2 cousins to pack. Just be right back.
Yes.
We jumped in the car, and the road was already covered in water. Couldn't get on the road. So we went through people's yards, and finally, the one thing I remember the most is my Aunt Fanny screaming.
Oh.
I don't think she ever stopped screaming.
Okay?
Right. She was a nervous person to begin with. Okay, sweet lady, just screaming. But we traveled through people's yards for a mile or 2 and didn't get far enough to his house when a wave of water hit us. And we were in his station wagon. Okay. And we actually floated for a little while. We actually floated.
Floated and not submerged, so that's a good thing. Okay.
The waves pushing you.
Yes. Yeah.
We ran aground. Okay. Yeah. Just a hill, if you can call a hill in Grand Chenier a hill.
Ridge. Yeah.
But there was a house. This Marvin Richard's house was there.
Okay.
And Uncle Norman pulled me out. He told me to hang on to the fence, okay, because the wind was blowing like crazy.
Yeah.
And I do remember my feet coming off the ground. Okay, holding on. I do remember that. It was like
from the wind, you were lifted up off the ground.
My feet were being lifted, but I was holding on for dear life.
Yes.
And I'm watching. My mother's hard-headed. He said, "Let me help you." My mother's name was Diane McCall.
Thank you.
She goes, let me help you. Let me help you. And she's hard-headed, and she tries to get out herself. She slips under the car. And he grabbed her, got her, pulled her out.
Thank you.
And he's screaming, got her out. Pop Tove got out. Yes. And we walked to the house.
Okay.
In that house, there was, I forget how many people in that house. A lot of people already there. Neighbors.
Yes. Okay.
And some old ladies were saying the rosary. Men just they didn't know what to do. My uncle, of course, wanted to go to his house. It was about another quarter of a mile, half a mile up the road.
Yes.
And couldn't. He just couldn't. So we're in the house. All of a sudden, the house moves, like the water's pushing the house.
Right.
And again, I'm a kid, right?
Yes.
Men got axes and drills, and they started busting holes in the floor. And all I could think about was, boy, Miss Richard's going to be mad. She had a daughter. There was a daughter there. Henrietta was her name. And we were about, she's a...
Henrietta Richard?
Yeah.
Okay.
She just passed away a few months ago.
Sorry.
But we kind of slipped and slided in the water. Okay, we kind of had fun doing that.
Yes.
But the house settled, didn't go anywhere. Eye of the storm passed. My uncle runs out. His house is gone. He comes back. His house is gone. The rest of the storm passed again. Lots of screaming, lots of praying. And it was over then.
Yeah.
And everybody's crying, and everybody, you know, as a kid, I'm not sure what's going on. I just see these adults.
Right. Mike, y'all stayed in the house, not in the attic, or y'all didn't have to go in the attic or anything?
No, in the
house.
Did not have to go in the attic.
Okay.
Water, it was a little ridge there. It really was, where his house was.
Yes.
So
it moved a little bit, but didn't really float 100 yards or anything like that. It just moved a little bit.
I don't think it went that far. It did move. It
moved. Okay. It floated for a while.
Correct. It couldn't have been more than 50 yards. It couldn't have been more. Because right away they started busting the holes.
Yes. And that helped. It lowered the house down, and it just weighted the house down on the ground, and that might be another reason why it didn't move. So after that,
correct, it was weighted down by the water.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I can't remember time of day. I can't remember any of that stuff.
Right.
But I do remember the next thing I really remember is outboard motors.
Okay. People coming in.
Coming in. People were okay, rescue us or whatever. My mom, I didn't mention, my mom was like 8 months pregnant. And the Army, I guess it was the Army, they were big old double prop Sikorsky's, or the helicopters, okay?
Yes, okay. Those large helicopters that could fit, 20 to 30 people in them, I guess.
Cargo helicopters.
Cargo helicopters, yes.
And they were landing at the little white church house. Okay?
Yes, okay.
And one of the outboards that came was my uncle, T-Boy McCall.
T-Boy McCall, okay.
And cousin Tommy Riggs.
Okay.
Danny's son. Okay.
Got you.
They took us as soon as they could. I want to say it wasn't right then and there, but it was like 6 hours, something like that afterwards. It was that same day. They took us to church. And my mom, and I remember Miss Loretta Smith was in there, and Omer Neal, her son, a year younger than me. Okay. And there may have been 2 other people in there. They were trying to get the injured. Omer Neal was injured. I'm not sure what was wrong with him, but he had blood on him.
All right.
My mom, of course, was pregnant. Wanted to get her out. And
yes.
Older person. And we flew in a helicopter. And I remember looking. There were no, as a kid again, there were no doors on the helicopter. Big old open area, both sides.
Yes.
And the only protection to stop you from falling out is a piece of rope. Okay. So you can see everything.
Yes.
An adventure. But see everything down there. And all I remember seeing cows, just dead cows everywhere. Yeah. Every once in a while it looked like a doll. Of course that was a body, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we ended up landing around McNeese.
Okay.
And I had an aunt that lived in Lake Charles, and she came, met us, and I don't even remember where we went after that. But I know
didn't stay at the rodeo arena. I know so many of them.
We didn't go through there. We didn't stay there. We did go through there.
But landed there, and then your aunt came over.
Correct.
Maybe took you to her house or something, or
we went to her house, and my uncle secured a rental house on Kirkman Street.
Okay.
And my grandmother.
What's your aunt and uncle that were living in Lake Charles? What are their names?
Lee Miller. And
Lee Miller.
Buzz Miller.
And what's your aunt's name?
Her name was Oma Miller. We called her Blue Eyes. He ended up finding a rental for us, and my grandmother and another aunt, Emma Arsenault, and Uncle Lawrence and their 2 children, they were on vacation this whole time. They lived in Grand Chinook too, but they were on vacation in Florida. So they came back a little early, and we all lived together in that little house on Kirkman Street for a little bit.
How did their house fare? Was their house still there?
It was flattened.
Okay. All right.
They lived up the ridge in the Pan American campsite.
Okay.
Way back then, oil companies built homes for their employees.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they lived in
that. Yeah.
Campsite.
Wow. How long were y'all in Lake Charles?
Well, we lived. There were like 8 or 9 of us in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house.
Oh no.
So my mom and I left I guess a couple of weeks afterwards, we went to stay with another uncle there in Lake Charles, Carol McCall.
Okay.
And Bill and Bob McCall's dad, if you know Bill.
Okay, I've heard, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we stayed there for a couple of weeks until we found a rental house in Greenwich Village.
Got you.
And we lived in Greenwich Village for, gosh, a few months, whatever.
Wow.
My mom
Did y'all go back and forth while y'all were living there?
My dad would, okay?
Okay.
That still worked, okay?
Right, yes.
21 and 7, 21 on, 7 off.
Goodness.
Okay. That was the norm. That was the norm. But my mom refused to go back. And we ended up building a house in Lake Charles, Highway 14.
Got
We
you.
built that house about 6 months. After building the house, we were already back in Grand Chenier. About 6 months after we built the house.
Got you.
I started school at Fairview Elementary
Okay.
in Lake Charles, first grade.
Yes.
And just went back to Grand Chenier.
Okay.
Built the house where all the house was.
Okay. Then that's quite an ordeal. That's quite a journey. And my goodness. I'm glad your mom and you have a younger brother or sister?
My brother Dale was born September of 57.
Okay.
And I have a sister, Mary Diane. She was born in 61. And a younger brother, Pete, was born in Pete Jr. Claude Jr. was born in 65.
Got you. Okay. So you're the oldest?
I'm the oldest.
Okay. All right. Wow. Well, that's goodness. Thank you for sharing.
It was very, there was nothing known as post-traumatic stress syndrome back then. Everybody had it. Everybody had it.
Yes.
I happened to notice, I was going through some old pictures, putting them on, scanning them and putting them on that Facebook site.
Yeah.
Saw our first family portrait after Audrey.
Oh my goodness.
I never noticed it, but our eyes are dead.
Yes.
This was taken like in I want to say 59. We just moved to our house, Dad built.
I remember seeing it. Yeah, I've been watching that page, and you're right. I mean, there was something about, even before I saw what you said, I looked at the picture. I went, "Wow,
Everybody went through it, though. I mean, everybody went through it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
It was all.
But you caught that, and that picture, I think, will speak for years to come if they want to know what the response 2 years after the storm. Here's the faces of the people who went through.
But they rebuilt.
They did. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's the strength and fortitude.
I don't think Grand Chenier ever regained what it had.
No.
But it came back. It did come back.
It definitely did. I mean, the people, I'm constantly amazed and just strengthened by you and others that I hear that have been through this and went back and made something, a great life. Basically, you stayed through high school and went on to college and have, served communities throughout the state, and that's just a wonderful testament to the nature and the strength of people from Cameron Parish.
The people from Cameron Parish, there's something special about them. There really is. And I'm not saying that because I'm from there, but they're resilient.
Yes.
And it goes all the way back to our ancestors. I mean, who in the world want to move to Grand Chenier where there's nothing but mosquitoes and alligators? Okay. And, my great, I think it's like 3 greats or 4 greats, I can't remember. Grandfather, Millage McCall, was like the first permanent settler in Grand Chenier.
In Grand Chenier. Okay.
We have a cousin, Beverly Ricks. He's passed now, but he did extensive research on the McCall family, the history and whatnot, and he did not share it. Okay, he was very stingy with it.
Oh.
But this Millage McCall, he actually owned Avery Island.
Really?
Sold it to the McElhaney's and moved to Grand Chenier. And it's like, I never could figure that one out, okay?
Yes.
Right after he moved, other associates of his moved, the Armstrongs, the Smiths, oh heck, the Doxies, the Dolans.
Yes.
And the interesting thing was, these were not Cajuns.
Right.
These were all Anglos. You know, they were all Anglos. Cajuns came in a little bit later.
Yes.
But they were very resilient. I mean,
Yes.
they raised crops. They had little industries going. They sold stuff. They exported stuff. They
were
imported.
independent, self-dependent, and
Self-sufficient.
knew how to work the land and also how to help people and serve people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really were.
That's wonderful. Mike, yeah, these names and these people you're telling me about that came, you know, from your ancestor, the McCall's, that first settlers there. This is truly just wonderful history lesson. Preserving history is something that we do here, and you're giving so many for generations to come an understanding of how everything started, and I love that. So thank you for that. And so we have your Audrey story, but you know, I'm fascinated by what you're telling me. Is there anything else you want to share at this point about
There's
Cameron Parish or your family?
Probably I don't have enough time. Okay?
I know.
And you know, my great grandfather Alcide Miller, I would have loved to have met him.
I know.
I mean, he sounds like he was way ahead of his time. He was a businessman, entrepreneur, owned schooners, had a grocery store, cotton mill, cotton gin, whatever. And it's like, put all of his kids through college, hired photographers from New Orleans to take some of those pictures I've been posting.
Yes.
You know, he was something else. Okay, but he died in the 1920s. Of course, I never would have met him.
Right. Yeah. But because of your grandmother, you know a lot about him.
I know so many stories. Yeah. No, I'd be happy to talk to you again.
I would love to, definitely. So thank you for this.